Hey, good morning, everyone. We're going to do this beautiful sand dunes. This is at Crane Beach in Ipswich. One of my favorite subjects. You'll really enjoy this. So we'll begin with a wash of cobalt blue on the top and bring that down to where the sand dune begins. So the sand dune color is raw sienna with a touch of rose and cobalt blue. And just mix it until you feel comfortable with the sand color. All right, so the shrubbery here, the ground we're putting on, it's just it's a brownish green, so it's raw sienna and cobalt, ultramarine blue, I'm sorry, for the dark there. A little touch of quin sienna, a little touch of rose. Just mix them till you feel comfortable with that color. So I painted the horizon line across the top. That looks like it's got to get a lot darker. Maybe not for your painting, but for mine I will. And I'm bringing it down. This is still on the top level. You can see that top level of the dune. It's getting more light up there. So I'm keeping that a little bit brighter. So that's raw sienna with the quin sienna and then some ultramarine blue to bring it down a little bit, just a touch. Okay, so it looks a little greenish brown. So I'm skipping, you see those holes, those are little pieces of sand dunes sticking out. I will go back and tone it down a little bit, just putting a little shrubbery around that sand dune. The one on the left I'll pretty much cover. All right, so you can read it, you can see the photo there. So what I'm doing here is I'm painting the shadow. See the shadow coming down over the side of the dune. So that's ultramarine with a touch of rose and a touch of raw sienna. So it looks gray here, but it's really a bluish violet. But that's that shadow casting down over the side of the dune. It'll all make sense as you move into the painting, but that's what we're painting first, because that's underneath, okay? And then we're going to cover that. All right, and then there's a little bit of it in the front here on this mound of sand in the front with all the shrubbery on it. That has a lot of shadow on it as well. And you can see I'm using ultramarine with a touch of rose and then a touch of raw sienna. The raw sienna grays it down quite a bit, but there's a lot of that reflective light. You can see that shadow in the back I painted now. It has that yellow is coming through. So there's the shadow, there's the dune in the front, and that's what we're painting right now, that shadow. We're going to go over that with the shrubbery once it sets up. So you can see I put a little bit of rose in there. So this is the shadow on the right side of it coming down over the side of the dune. Ultramarine and rose and a little bit of raw sienna in there. And you don't want it all to look the same, so you want the colors to show themselves. You want to be able to identify the different colors. So I'm letting the shadow stuff set up, and I'm going back on top of the ridge there and just putting some shrubbery, covering up some of that white, the sand dunes they look like sand traps on a golf course, but that's what they are. And that has to get much darker up in the back there. So it may not on your painting, so pay attention to that. I mean, this is my painting. It looks a little light to me, so I'm going back and putting some little darker back there. And I'm just using those three colors, ultramarine, raw sienna, maybe a little quin sienna, and rose. So this is the shrubbery coming over the hill, over the side of that hill. Leave those whites. The shadow was still too wet, so you can see that drip coming down. I'll fix that later. So this is the edge of the right side of the shrubbery there. And you can see as it comes down the hill, it turns and sort of levels off towards you. And that's going to get more light, so that's a little lighter value, a little warmer. I'm putting some the quince sienna a little stronger here on raw sienna. And I'm not painting it all across because I want it to have the effect of shrubbery. You know, I want it to look like shrubbery. You know, I want it to look like bushes and, you know, uneven. You can see the quince sienna stronger there, much warmer. It's getting more sunlight, you know, warmer color. And it's going up to the top of the ridge. And there's a big space. A little darker there. I could have made that shadow a little darker, but anyway, the shrubbery's coming over the side of that ridge, and it's much darker because, you know, the form, it's turning there away from the light, so it's not getting the same amount of light that the top ridge is getting. We want to show that. That's really important in your painting. And I'm just fiddling with it now, making the little pieces of shrubbery coming down the side of the sand trap there. Not really a sand trap. It's not a golf course, but it looks like one. All right, so you can see me working that. You can do that. Study the photo, study out the photo. Enjoy this. This is a fun painting. Little pieces of the shrubbery growing out of the sand, and it'll all come together in a few minutes. You've seen 1,000 sand traps like this. I'm calling it a sand trap, but it's just looks like a sand trap. Okay, just spotting it with the dark, and I'm just going to even out that ridge line. That's the turn of the ridge, obviously, right? Okay, that should be making a little more sense to you. All right, so all the shrubbery, anything turning down is going to be darker. Get away from that light, and we want to emphasize that. We want to really show that. I don't have that big drip in the photo, but I'm going to turn it into some shrubbery coming down rather than try to fix it. Okay, so it should be starting to make a little sense to you now, the way it looks here. Just working the shrubbery. It's really a simple painting when you think about it, isn't it? You know, we just painted that shadow first that might have thrown you off, but just pieces of that shrubbery and grass growing up through the sand. All right, now in the front here, we're going to cover this big mound of sand that has all the grass on it and the shrubbery, and you know, a little part of it's in the light, but you can see that beautiful shadow we painted with the violet and the ultra and the violet and the raw sienna, and showing all that kind of reflective light bouncing around the sand, and, you know. Okay, so you can see that technique I'm using painting it, not a straight stroke like we usually paint with the brush, but this uneven bouncing stroke that sort of shows the texture of the grass, which is what we're really looking for here. All right, so the mound has some grass growing out of it, and that's just raw sienna. It's a lighter, it's getting more light there, so. Just using the side of your brush. Okay, so I'm just doing a little spattering here. That back grass is set up, and I'm just spattering it and patting it, and that gives you a little more texture, a little more light here and there, and you can work out the grasses a little more in the bare area where there's just sand. Just throwing a little splash at it here and there. Okay. All right, that was really nice. That's a fun painting. I like that a lot. I love the beach, and I love the sand, and I love the colors. So thank you so much again for joining me. I appreciate you coming along for the ride, and enjoy this. I will see you again very soon, and thank you for watching.